One of the most wretched haunted house stories is from the year 1912. And what makes the story so wretched is that the story is true. On June 10th, 1912, Josiah and Sarah Moore were stabbed to death inside of their home in Villisca, Iowa. It was just like any night, and both Sarah and Josiah were in the house with their 4 children and 2 friends who were spending the night. Unfortunately, they were all killed. To this day, the crime remains a mystery. Nobody really knows who killed them, what killed them, and why. Were they just a random target, or was there some reason? No matter what reason, there was no justifying the horrible murders that took place inside the Moore home on that horrifying night back in June 10th, 1912. The Moore's home is considered to be one of the most haunted houses in the United States of America. But just like most paranormal experiences that happened in certain places and murders and hauntings, there are always certain people drawn to them places. People pay $400 to stay for one night inside the Moore home. There have been paranormal tours, but they have been cut short by children's voices, falling lamps, moving ladders, and flying objects, says the Villisca Axe Murder House website. One of the worst events that had happened in the house since the murders was when a paranormal investigator stabbed himself after spending the night. As the Villisca Axe Murder House website states, skeptics have left believers. I had a long day and even longer night, and was so tired getting home. I knew that my husband would be fast asleep when I got home. I crept upstairs quietly and got dressed for bed, then crept in, not to wake my husband. I was just about to go to sleep when I heard something. I thought it was my husband up and about, but then I knew it wasn't, as I could hear his snoring. Thankfully, my husband didn't snore loud, but I could hear his faint snoring, which told me he was definitely asleep. I had no pets, so it couldn't have been a cat or a dog. I froze in my bed when I heard another noise. This time, it was in my room. I didn't move and opened my eyes just a fraction. I could see a dark figure across my room wearing a ski mask. The figure was over by my jewellery. My heart thumped in my chest and I felt like screaming, but didn't want to advertise I was here. I knew, of course, whoever it was had seen me, but I closed my eyes and pretended to be asleep, hoping they would leave and I could wake my husband and lock the door and call the police. I didn't want them to know I was awake for fear of some altercation where anything could happen. Whoever was in the room, it could be a crazy man or woman, they could be a serial killer or just some crazy addict. All these crazy thoughts ran through my mind as my heart beat faster and faster as I felt sweat fall from my brow onto my cheek. I continued to be asleep. I could hear footsteps on my carpet, but couldn't figure out which part of my room they were coming from. Suddenly, they stopped. I listened intently for more movement, but heard none. I hoped and prayed whoever was in my room were making their way downstairs now and would leave my house immediately. But I froze in fear when I heard a sinister voice in my ear say, "I know you're awake." Back in 1883, there were 5 prospectors, including a man called Alfred, travelled towards Gunnison in Colorado in the high hope of being lucky enough to find gold. The travellers found themselves with very low supplies, and to make matters worse, they were exposed to relentless freezing winter months. They tried their best to battle the freezing cold, but it turned out that their only option was cannibalism. This led to murder. Alfred was the sole survivor and was convicted on 4 counts of murder on Friday the 13th, April 1883. Packer's defense was that his fellow travelers had turned hostile towards him and he was forced to kill them, and the only reason he ate their bodies was out of necessity. Whether it was true cannibalism or out of bare necessity, Alfred was convicted on Friday the 13th. It was Christmas Eve, and Carmel was very excited, looking forward to Christmas, and knew she couldn't sleep with anticipation of Santa Claus bringing her presents to her in the morning. Herself and her mom and dad were leaving a glass of milk and a carrot out for Santa and his reindeers, what they did every Christmas Eve. Then it was time for her to go to bed, her mom and dad told her. As she went to bed, she found it hard to get to sleep with excitement. She heard a noise from downstairs, and being so excited, hoping to catch a glimpse of Santa Claus, she went downstairs. And to her surprise, she saw a man at the kitchen table. She turned back slowly and crept up the stairs and went into her parents' room, nudging her mom awake. Carmel said, "Mommy, Mommy, Santa Claus is downstairs." Her mom said, "That's great, sweetie, now go back to sleep, or he might get mad and not leave your presents." Suddenly, Carmel's mom heard a noise from downstairs, so she went down to investigate. Her heart pounded in her chest when she saw a black figure in her kitchen running out of the door with their turkey. Carmel couldn't understand why her mom was so afraid. The figure Carmel thought to be Santa was a thief who broke into their house on Christmas Eve.
Hi, this is a story I have from when I was a boy, about 10. I remember my mom used to tell me all cool stories about a ballroom called the Shiny Ballroom. It sounded like a really cool place. She told me back then all the girls were at one side and all the boys were at the other side. And when the slow dances came on, the boys would walk or sometimes slide across the floor to ask the girl who they would like to dance with out to dance. The ballroom used to also have all the biggest show bands and singers of the time. This would have been around the 60s and 70s, in the height of the rock and roll and show band era. There was a crystal ball in the middle of the room. I'd love to have known what would it have been like to grow up in the rock and roll era. When I was 10, the ballroom was shut down for years, and it was abandoned as long back as I can remember. It actually was not even open when I was born, I'd say. I remember seeing teenagers go around the back of the hall, so I realized that there must have been an entrance into the building. One day, me and my mum were passing it, coming back from shopping, and we decided to take a look at the back of the building. We saw a window smashed, and it was an entrance into the building. Me and Mom decided to climb up into the opening to see what the building was like now. We climbed through the space and noticed an eerie, lonesome atmosphere. I remember thinking of all the dances and people who met each other and happy times, and now it's just this dark and creepy abandoned building. We walked through an entrance where the steps were down to the dance floor. My mom was telling me where the people used to dance, and she showed me where the crystal ball used to hang from the ceiling. It was now just an old piece of cable hanging from the ceiling. I tried to imagine how this place once looked. It must have been such an incredible, lively dance hall back in its day. We walked through the dance floor, and there was a drawing of a couple dancing on the wall. My mom showed me where the boys used to sit and the girls. I realized how different things are today. We walked through the hall, and at the back of it there was a side room. I noticed something very creepy on the wall. Even though I was 10, I was a fan of heavy metal, so I knew what a pentagram was, or some people might call it the Devil's Star. I told Mom to look, and I shone the light on the wall. There was a pentagram written in red with 666 below it, and a satanic verse saying, "Death will rest here" at the end of it. Me and Mom found it very creepy, and I felt uneasy being in the room. I had a fear of anything to do with Satanism or the devil, and back then it was the satanic pandemic. Loads of stories were breaking on the news about different things linked to Satanism, and I was only a kid, so it freaked me out totally. I often think I would have loved to have taken a photo of that verse on the wall. You might wonder why, but it will make sense in the end of this story. It was a creepy experience, but years later was when it got a whole lot creepier. When news broke they were going to build a funeral home on the exact ground of the dance hall, exactly where the verse was written that said, "Death will rest here." The funeral home now has been built for years, and the coffins lie exactly in the same spot as the verse was written. That's why I would have loved to have taken a photo to see exactly the words, "Death will rest here." Of all the places they could have built a funeral home, I felt it so weird and creepy. They built one on the exact same place. There was a satanic verse written on a wall saying, "Death will rest here."